Hey, it's Kathy with Rock Your Retirement. And as promised, today's Friday, and so you'll be getting to listen to Henry Shapiro's Retired Excited. I know you're just going to love this as much as I do. And don't forget, you can still listen to Rock Your Retirement, where I'm the host, and those shows are released on Mondays.
Welcome to the Retired Excited podcast. Retired Excited, the show where we give retired and want to be retired folk a look at how great retired life can be. Here we talk to men and women who are happily retired and loving their life. We explore the techniques, activities, beliefs, and excitement of these happy retirees and examine how every Tom, Dick, and Mary can benefit from their experience. Together, we will delve into what retired happiness really looks like and how anyone can achieve it.
Here is your host, Henry Shapiro.
Hey folks, Henry here, Retired Excited, the show providing inspiration for people who are nearly retired, newly retired, or say they're never going to retire. If you're nearing retirement and fearful of what lies ahead, you don't need to be. If you're already retired and wondering how to fill your days, then this show is exactly for you. Here we talk to retired people doing things that make them happy. Things from stamp collecting to cruising, from dancing to touring the world on a motorbike. There's an exciting stage of life to be enjoyed after full-time work, and it's got nothing to do with your financial situation or social position. We talk to everyday retired people who are living the life they want, and we talk to a few professionals to get expert advice. And I chip in with some of my own experiences. All right, welcome everybody to Retired Excited. This is episode 16, Retired Excited, where we provide inspiration for an excellent retirement. Except for this episode. This one's going to be a little bit different. I'm interviewing a man who, although he's retired, we don't talk about his retirement. We talk about what he's been doing in life. I went to see him to talk about retirement, but got really wrapped up in all the interesting things he'd been doing. His name's Rob Anderson, and for 50 years, he's been a sailor, getting his master's certificate at what seems to me to be a really young age of 28. I want to say at the start that there's a couple of things. I'm really sorry about the echo. I'm sorry about the echo on the soundtrack. He says we were in his, when I asked him where we were, he says that we are in the stables below his house, but we're actually in a little room adjacent to the stables, and it's a small room with very hard surfaces, and there's nothing I could do about the echoes. It's still very legible. Is that the word for audio? Anyhow, it's still easy to understand. When you think sea captain, I think you and I would automatically think of people who are driving ocean liners. But Rob starts out by telling us, or one of the things Rob tells us is about all the various things that sea captains do, and they might be captains of tugs, cruise liners, pilot boats, all sorts of things, harbour masters. There's a whole range, and Rob has in fact done a whole bunch of those things. This interview is full of anecdotes. He completely distracted me from where I had meant to go, but it's a fantastic interview. You'll hear as we're going along that most of the time I can hardly speak. I've cracked up so much. Anyhow, as always, I greet him and ask him to explain where it is that we are. Good day, Rob. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Now, where are we?
Well, we're in the wilds of Narnagoon North, sitting in a horse stable down the hill from my house.
He's making it sound really rough, folks, but it's a gorgeous property. We're up on a hill, got a brilliant view out over the hills. There's that water I can see.
Yeah, it's Western Port Bay, yeah.
Looking out over Western Port Bay. Unbelievable. And as you walk around the property, there's lots of interesting things. There are brand new tractor.
Tractor, yes.
There's a tractor. Racing cars, motorbikes, horse gear, all sorts of stuff. You're involved in lots of stuff, Rob.
Eclectic taste.
Eclectic. Now, what I really wanted to talk to you about is what you've been doing for the last... How many years you've been doing this?
More than I cared about. 50 years or more, yeah.
50 years. 50 years he's been on the water, folks. Now, just very quickly, we won't dwell on these, but started out as... What did you start out as?
Went to sea as a schoolboy at 15 as a deck boy on a cargo ship, on a British flag cargo ship.
Yeah.
And then got my license, all my different licenses, and I was lucky enough to have my captain's, my master certificate at the age of 28, which is an unlimited master's ticket. So at the age of 28...
What does a master's ticket let you do?
Master 1 is unlimited anywhere in the world, any sort of ship.
So it could be a cruise liner?
Could be anything, yeah. Anything
at 28 years old, that's amazing.
Yeah. And then I was lucky enough, I got a captain's job straight after, so I wasn't the youngest captain or the first one, but, I was
pretty young. Yeah.
So I was the captain of a British flag ship, and the captain's always called the old man, and I was the youngest guy on the ship. And then I was lucky to pretty much keep in that slot until now, and I'm 67, so that's something like 50.
No, you haven't been on that sort of ship or boat. Now, am I allowed to call this a ship or a boat? A ship?
Yeah, ship. Yeah, I don't like boats so much, no.
No, okay.
We've had a few boats, but no, ships.
What,
I don't know.
Just for the listeners, tell us what the difference is.
Perhaps it is that a ship can carry a boat and not vice versa.
Okay. That's a good definition. Now, you said you keep doing that, but you haven't. You've done all sorts of different things within the nautical community.
True, yes. I started off in general cargo ships and then container ships as an officer, and then passenger ships. I had 5 years on passenger ships as an officer, not a captain. Mm-hmm. And then I was in the offshore oil industry, which I really enjoyed. That was all around the world, towing oil rigs and servicing them and things like that. Actually had 2 oil rigs sink on me while I was towing them.
But not your fault. Not your fault.
No. And then I got a bit restless with that, and I thought I'd like to. My children were young. I thought I'd like to be a Port Phillip sea pilot, piloting the ships. So I joined another company, Brambles, which became Toll, and I drove the cargo ships across Bass Strait and the Tasman, in and out of Melbourne, to get the licenses to then be approved as a pilot. Mm-hmm. I was approved as a pilot and didn't like the people very much, and at the same time an opportunity came to be a Torres Strait Barrier Reef marine pilot. Yes. So I thought that was better. And
so you lived up there?
Well, I had another house up there. I had an aeroplane. I used to fly back and forth. And then so I did that for 5 years with the pilotage companies, and then myself and 2 other pilots got out and started our own pilotage business. That's another story.
Is that the term for a pilotage business?
Yeah, marine pilotage business. Yeah,
okay.
Quite a hard thing to take on. The big players, and then it was all done by helicopters. So we had to. I'm getting away from myself.
That's all right.
So then I did that for that partnership. Actually soured, and then I got out and I came back, and I was then I was a check and training pilot, so I had a basic teaching qualification. Mm-hmm. I went to a maritime college just sticky being around, and they grabbed me because I had good credentials. So I started to teach occasionally. While teaching at the college at Lakes Entrance,
how old are you at this stage? This is
about 10 years ago.
Okay, yes.
The harbour master decided to leave, so then I became the harbour master for Gippsland Port, which is a bbig area from Malakoota all the way to Western Port Bay. Huge area, biggest waterway in Australia, the Gippsland Lakes. Yeah. It was an interest. I love the area, still do, but it was a bureaucratic paper nightmare,
Yes.
So I left that, and then I had to go at my own business for quite a few years, delivering ships in high piracy areas, picking up ships from shipyards, not always, but mainly in Cochin. There's a very big shipyard in Cochin. Deliver them to the west coast of Africa, past the Horn of Africa, where the pirates are, and then down into the west coast of Africa. And unfortunately, I got on top of the piracy, and that...
Unfortunately?
Yeah, that wasn't good for my business. So then I gravitated back into the offshore oil industry, got myself another master's ticket, which is a Norwegian master's ticket.
Yes.
which, funnily enough, has to be approved by the King of Norway. Actually, it's very difficult.
So you're on speaking terms with the King?
Yeah, that's me. I had to actually. He endorses it. They're very sensitive about their flag and who's the captain of their ship.
That's good.
So
That's really good.
there's a few around, but it's a hard one to get. So I was captain of Norwegian subsea engineering ships for the past 5 years, I guess. I don't know. I haven't really added up, but doing subsea robotics and things like that, deep water robotics. And now the industry's taken a little bit of a dive, and the industry is really fickle.
Yes.
And interestingly, they said to me, it's a Norwegian government policy that there cannot be a Norwegian ship captain out of work at the expense of an international, which I am. So they said, look, we're very sorry, but we can't employ you when we have a Norwegian captain sitting on the beach.
Yeah.
So, I left. And
I wish Australia did the same thing.
Yes, I do too. Mm-hmm. So then I got a job on a Norwegian ship, a Norwegian company ship, but it was registered in Cyprus. That's the Expout ship I showed you. So I drove that for a few years, and now I'm sitting around, and I had the misfortune to fall down the stairs in heavy weather and hurt my knee. So I just temporarily hung up at the moment.
Right.
But I'm sort of figuring that maybe at 67 I've had a good run. Maybe the writing's on the wall.
Enough.
Yeah. So that's a brief history.
There's a few of those I absolutely want to come back on. So let's go back to earlier in life when you're on passenger ships. Yes. What was the good thing about being an officer, about being on passenger ships?
The social life was fantastic. Actually, you might be interested to know that passenger ships don't pay very well. The worst paying ships to work on are passenger ships. Nearly every other sort of ship pays more than a passenger ship.
Gracious me!
But you have a pretty good lifestyle. Of course, being single.
Give me an example.
I had a good head of hair then, and I probably wasn't quite so fat. And I used to, as a fellow motorcyclist, I used to take my motorcycle on the ship with me. So at any of the ports, I'd always have somebody on the back, and off I'd blast. So it was a good lifestyle.
Now, when you say somebody on the back, another crew member, or did one of the passengers?
Well, it could have been a crew member because there's a lot of girls work on the ship as well. So it was a good lifestyle, but it had to come to an end. I was having too much of a good time.
Too much fun?
Yes. And then we took the ship to the breakers. They finished. It were P&O ships, and we ran them up on the beach in Taiwan, and they set fire to them to burn the wood out and chop them up for scrap.
What?
So that was the end of. Yeah, there's not much money in the internal fittings of a ship, so. Those ships, Cathay Chitral, we took to Hong Kong. All the last passengers got off, and all the tables were still laid, and the linen, and most of the stuff was still there. They took the pianos off and things like that. Then a run crew, we took it to Taiwan, to the east coast of Taiwan, a place called Hualien, and then drove it up on the beach, like they do in India now. And then they leave it with the engine running, so it pushes itself further up each tide. And then as we were getting off, they set the incendiary bombs around the ship and set fire to it. Beautiful ship, teak railing and, beautiful ship. But they burn all the combustibles out of it to get to the steel, which they recycle. So
that's what they do with dead ships. They burn it. That's amazing.
It's not worth removing the fittings and stuff, yeah. That's another story, yeah. And then I went to container ships, which I really enjoyed for a while because they were very fast, very modern ships, and I was on the...
Well, is a container faster than a passenger ship?
Generally speaking, yes. Okay. Although nowadays, there's some pretty fast ships around.
Yes.
But in those days, most of the ships were travelling around 15, 16 knots is considered a reasonable speed. Mm-hmm. Container ships were doing 28 knots, and that was very fast.
Yeah, that is fast.
So we used to do Australia to Japan. We had the fastest trip ever. We went from Brisbane to Japan in 6 days, which is flying along in a big container ship. And
when you say, is this just a matter of turn up the wick, or is it when you say we did it fast, your company told you to do it
yes.
fast? How did this happen?
Well, then what happened very shortly after that, I'm really struggling with the years, but that would have been in the late 70s, I'm guessing. Mm. Then the fuel prices started to really kick in. Mm. And, of course, these things gobble up the fuel, so they wound them all back. In fact, there were ships running around at that time, not my ship, but there were ships running at that time that were burning 600 tonnes of fuel a day. 600 tonnes of fuel a day. Yeah. You imagine the cost. So the accountants got involved and the ship slowed down, and the industry changed.
So when you look at it, is it, I don't know how to even put this question, Do you use more fuel going slow for longer or fast for shorter?
No. The ships they vary. A big heavy capacity bulk carrier will make its money by the volume of stuff it takes. So it doesn't have to go fast. So it can carry 300,000 tonne of product at 15 knots for 55 days. It's an economical way of moving something. But a ferry or a passenger ship will move faster, and they just levy the passengers for the fuel, don't they?
Yes. Would it not be quicker to, instead of taking 55 days to get there in 40 days and get another cargo?
The ships are, you're right, but the ships are designed at a hull speed, so the whole thing is thought out beforehand, so they have an economical speed.
Yeah.
Interestingly, on the ships that I've been driving recently, we have multiple engines. If we run on one engine, we'll do 12, 13 knots. If we run on two engines, we'll do 15 knots. So you double the horsepower and double the fuel consumption for 3 more miles per hour. If you want. So it's doesn't add up.
Yeah. Has there ever been any incidents when you've been on these passenger ships, or?
Passenger ships are mainly, unfortunately, mainly people dying. Yeah,
that's an incident.
On the modern cruise ships where there are a younger clientele, of course, it's not so common, but traditionally the passenger ships were mainly older people, retirees and older people, and they die like flies. They really do. And
this is not to do with the food, is it?
No. And we would generally, the captain and the person, they'd convince them to bury them at sea because it's so economical. And if you've got a doctor on board, he can write a death certificate. Yeah. I can't write one as a captain, but on the passenger ship we carry a doctor. If you can do the death certificate, and then convince the people to do the burial at sea, it's only a few $1,000s compared to $10,000 to freight a body home.
Tell me about a burial at sea. How does that work?
Well, with the prepare the body usually in a canvas shroud, like a large bag with some weights in it, and then we have a board or a kind of a plank arrangement on the rail, and the body in the bag is under a flag which is pinned at one end.
Yes.
We get down there at sunrise to slow the ship or stop the ship totally, which is a big deal to stop a big ship. The captain will read a service, and then he'll give the nod, the wink to the officers standing at the end. You lift the board up and the body shoots out from under the flag, splash into the sea, and we're off.
Do the passengers know this is going on?
They make an announcement, but we do it at a discreet place. Now, I can tell you, I can tell you a very funny story because we had quite a few people die this particular voyage, and I was a second mate. I was on the 12 to 4 watch, midnight till 4, and we had to stay up until sunrise to do this, and we're getting a bit grumpy because it happened quite a few nights. So we said to the mate, look, we're sick of this. How about the engineer officers do it? Because they come out of the engine room, their officers, and he said, good idea. So these 2 engineers came out. They were, one said to the other, have you ever done this before? He said, nah, it's pretty easy. He said, if those deadheads could do it, we could do it. We're engineers. He said, how heavy is it? I don't know. He said, let's go down and just have a look. So they went down and he said, grab a side, just how heavy is it? And lifted up and the body shot out. But it was 2 hours before sunrise. So they being good engineers, they went and had a beer at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then got the mate up and said, oh, we've had an accident, we've tipped the body in the drink a bit early, and there was a big ruckus, and they made up another one. They made up another one we got the carpenter and the butcher, and made up another body which was shot over the side with a rumble of chain and engine room spare parts.
Because I imagine all the relatives are there.
Oh. True story.
Now, you tell me, when we were off air, you said that if there's no doctor, the captain looks after medical stuff.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's something that I'm always surprised that people don't realise, but there are a lot more ships in the world than there are cargo ships in the world than there are passenger ships.
Yes.
Passenger ships and some working ships have the luxury of a doctor and a paramedic. I have, the last couple of ships I've been on, had a paramedic. Mm-hmm. I think if you have over 12 people, I can't remember the number. So a foreign-going ship's master, Master Class 1, part of his training is he has to go do a special medical course, and you have to renew it, refresh it every 5 years. And in my case, I went to go to several different hospitals, go to the big hospitals in Melbourne in the casualty section, and you do a 10-day course. 2 of those days you spend in the morgue, and some long-suffering doctor will take you around and open up a few things. So we have to be prepared to do something like an appendectomy, or so there's no one else to do it.
Tell me, typically or not typically, what's the most worst?
Gender reassignment.
Oh, you've done
No, mainly suturing, mainly just wounds, and I haven't. I've become very close to having to open a few people up, but managed to get it out of that. But theoretically, we have a wonderful book with patterns and dotted lines and things like that. You have SATCOM. Someone will talk you through it, and I've done a lot of stitching. Can I tell you a quick story?
Please.
I was trying to. I saw the guys recently. We were on an ice-breaking anchor handler working in the Great Australian Bight, and we got in totally alcohol-free on the ship. So when we got into port, we thought we'd rush up the pub.
Hang on, we're talking sailors and alcohol-free in the one breath.
Alcohol-free for years.
Okay.
Ever since Exxon, not a drop on ship.
Okay.
And the crayfisherman watchman guy lent us his little pickup truck in Portland, and we all piled into this. And I stood on the back with an engineer hanging on to the cab. I was very careful. I'm well aware of how dangerous this could be. We roared up the road, and the engineer next to me got a bit excited. He banged on the roof. Hey, we're off. And the guy driving, the mate, he thought something
was wrong.
So he hit the brakes, and Magnus took off like a Superman over the bonnet, landed on the road on his head, and left a bit of meat there. And so we put him on a park bench, and there was blood streaming out. And I was thinking, well, that's buggered that. We're never going to get to the pub. And the chief mate was a wonderful guy. Dave said, I've fixed worse than that. He said, we'll race back to the ship. We had a little hospital. He said, I'll bang a few stitches in. He said, only take a sec. We'll clean him up. We'll be back in time for the pub. So we get back to the ship. Dave's got the gloves on. He's ripped open all the suture packs, and he's crisscrossing them over Magnus's head. And Magnus said, Dave, he said, I'm starting to go a bit bald on the back there. He said, can you tighten it up a bit there for me, please? And Dave said, no problem. He said to me, Rob, you pull those out. So Dave's got 6 suture, he's got 3 each side, you see, and he said to me, well, you pull those 3 and I'll pull these 3 and we'll tighten her up a bit. So we heave-ho, we give him a tug. And another guy sitting there said, geez, he said, you've got to stop. He said, his eyebrows are moving up his head. And so he had this kind of startled look on his face. And I still laugh now that his ears were slowly migrating up. He would end up looking like Mickey Mouse. So we backed him off a tad, tied him in a knot, we stuck a hat on, and then we made it to the pub, and there was a big bouncer at the door. He said, oh, you guys, he said, you're cutting a bit fine, and we said, no, we're all right. And then he looked at Magnus. He said, what's the matter with him? He said, is he pissed? And we said, no. He said, well, look at him. Magnus was all, what? And he said, he said, tell him to take his hat off. Well, that was the end of that, because it looked like a horror movie. But, so there's always a story, isn't there? Always a story. But I have to assure you, Henry, you couldn't invent a story like that, could you? We get worse, and I won't go into this one, but another accident which is worth just... We're in the Southern Ocean, towing a big oil rig, I forget, South Africa to somewhere, I don't know. The quickest way around the world is around the bottom. You go down the south, you run along the edge of the ice, and pop back up.
Shorter.
That's why all the yachtsmen get into trouble down there, And we're in heavy weather, and the chief engineer came and said, one of the engineers had a nasty accident. What had happened, the engineer was standing at his wash basin having a shave with no clothes on, with his doodle hanging out, and the ship's bumped, and he's fallen against the drawer and jammed the old fella in the drawer. We took 3 stout engineers, a mighty job to get the drawer open, and then, of course, this thing is flat in the middle. So my medical skills have been drawn upon for some very strange things.
Oh, you're worried. Moving on right along.
Yeah, we better, yeah.
You said that, not you personally, but some oil rigs had sunk. Now, how do you sink an oil rig? How do you float an oil rig for a start?
I spent a lot of time doing ocean towage for a P&O company, an Australian-based company, doing and towing very, very big oil rigs and ships. Some people might remember a big passenger ship we had in Australia called Oriana.
Yes.
I towed that from Sydney to Japan. She was dead and couldn't go anywhere. So towing ships is actually quite easy, but the oil rigs are quite difficult. And the first one...
If I just break in on the public, or my view of an oil rig is a great big metal thing.
Yeah.
How do you keep the thing afloat?
They're designed to float, and they'll move from location to location, then they sink themselves down and start doing what they do best. But you tow them all around the world, and the first one I towed we picked it up in a shipyard in the Inland Sea in Japan, and then to tow it to Sakhalin, which is off the coast of Siberia, up in the ice. Brand new, $360 million. And the first day out of Japan, a bad storm hit and it wasn't sustainable and rolled over and sank. Oh, that one ended up more or less smacked up on the rocks, which was a bit unfortunate because it was brand new. And
rolled over sideways.
And then the next one was quite shortly after, really. It was another one called Key Biscayne. I was towing that from Darwin to Fremantle. That one actually, unbeknownst to us, and they never told us, started to downflood through some cracks in the hull.
Okay.
And then they abandoned it. Had 53 people on board. They got some emergency helicopters and abandoned it off Carnarvon.
They told you by this time that things were crook?
Not really. Things were pretty crook.
Yeah.
And then that one actually rolled over and sank at night. We didn't actually see it go. And that was a pretty much equivalent value.
But you've got this thing on a cable or something?
Yeah, 100 millimetre tow wire, maybe nearly a mile long. That's big business. And that one had broken away a few times, so we used lots of rocket lines. And, it's a big industry. Offshore towing is big stuff.
What sort of ship are you towing it with?
With the offshore ships are designed to be multi-task. They can carry cargo, they can do diving work, and they can they also have very, very heavy towing gear.
Right.
That's why the job is so interesting. It's always there's always something different.
Does any no other way to say this? Any blame come back to the captain who's towing?
They always love to pass the buck, but in each instance there were bigger fish to fry.
Right.
The interesting thing was though that the company, perhaps it's unwise to mention, but they always deal with a big law firm in Melbourne that look after their affairs. Mm-hmm. And after the first oil rig, I was called in to see the lawyers. Of course, they rubbed their hands gleefully because they can drag this out for a year and make a lot of money.
Yes.
And then within a very short period of time, I appear on the doorstep again with another one.
Yes.
Well, I was the man of the month. I was invited to the Christmas party and given a pen, and I was a good milk cow for them. And then about 10 years go by, and I was working for Brambles and had a whole lot of animals unfortunately die on the ship. A big semi-trailer went over the side and some collapsed. And I ended up in Melbourne Magistrates Court. I was charged with 37 counts of cruelty to animals as the master of the ship because these poor animals had suffered. Yeah. However, guess what? I went to the same law firm, and when I walked in the door, you could see the little piggy eyes, and they were rubbing their head. Here he is. This guy's great. We make a lot of money out of him. I said, what have you lost this time? Expecting another $360 million oil rig.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I've lost a few cows, unfortunately.
A few cows over the side. So we move on to from that to piracy.
Piracy is good, yeah. I like piracy.
You like piracy. You've done well out of piracy. Well, not personally, but...
yes. No, pirates are...
Tell me about the pirates. Who are these?
Well, they're not... Under the guidelines of UNCLOS, which is United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, there is no such thing as a pirate. A pirate, by definition, is a stateless person. And if you think about, Pirates of the Caribbean and all these sort of people, they weren't nationalised. They weren't American flag or British flag. They just removed themselves from society, and they were stateless people. The people that are operating now as pirates should be inverted commas because they're still actually citizens of a country. They're citizens of Indonesia. They're citizens of Somali. They're citizens of Cameroon or West African countries. So they're not really the real McCoy.
Yes.
They're bandits and rogues and thieves and murderers, but
I see.
Really but we call them pirates, but it's really a bit incorrect. Now, they vary in different parts of the world. In the Indonesian archipelago, they're mainly thieves. In the West African coast, they hold people for ransom. And in the Horn of Africa, they board a ship and they'll try to take the ship. In the China Sea, they take the ships for the fuel. Take the fuel out of the ship and then abandon it. So they're thieves and rogues of different sorts, you know. Now, all I got involved with is that a lot of the big companies prefer not to put their own officers and crew on the ships for a whole range of reasons, mainly insurance, so they'll subcontract it out. So I got onto that, and I used to deliver them for them. Sometimes I go to the shipyard and do the sea trials for the new ship, no matter what it might be. Then you get familiar with it and then put a run crew on. And if they wish, sometimes they don't, but if they wish, you can hire people with guns, large
Well, I was going to say that
Russians and Ukrainians, and they get $1,000 a day. It's not bad cash.
Probably better than the captain.
Yeah, it probably is. And they, and then they'll come for the run.
So this always amazes me. A ship is a very big thing, and the deck is a long way out of the water. And you see things on the news of the pirates are in little boats. How can you take over a great big ship? You know, when you've got a little outboard on the back or whatever.
Not that hard. And actually, the Victorian Police, I was watching a video just recently of watching them board a ship too. They first off, if they get alongside them, they can throw a grapnel up. And you're talking of fairly agile people. I mean, they're pretty fit, so they can go hand up a rope, no problem to a fit person. And then when one person gets up there, they can pull a rope ladder up.
Okay.
You know, in the Malacca Straits, they've got a good technique there, whereas they'll have two boats with a rope stretched between the two of them, and then an approaching ship will pick up the rope, and the boats will just stream alongside, so they don't even have to run the engine. They'll come aboard. Yeah, Victorian Police have some very sophisticated launches, but they use a big rod with a hook. They wind a handle and goes up, puts the first rope on. They put a dinky little ladder. So you're very correct in so that it's a long way up, but I mean.
But I would have thought you're up above them, but the problem is you're not armed necessarily.
Very few, if any, merchant ships are armed. Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever been attacked by pirates?
I've had them come on board, but I mean they've got rid of them pretty quick. But not that frequently. No, I can't say it's like the Wild West. What happens is, especially out of some of the shipyards, the network is very strong. So the shipyard workers will get paid some sort of fee to advise the pirates of what might be going on, especially in the Horn of Africa. So if they know that you've started to prepare the ship with razor wire and you're going to pick up some gunmen, they generally won't come near. They know not to do that.
Yes, yes.
But of course, the big problem, people say, well, why don't ships carry guns? Well, there's a lot of problems associated with guns when you enter into countries. Yes. Even if you have them under lock and key. And therein lies a problem with the shooters. I mean, going in and out of India, it's the same as Australia. You can't turn up at Tullamarine with a sports bag with two AK-47s or 74s. So in that case, we used to leave Cochin and go to Colombo off Sri Lanka and rendezvous, with a trawler and then bring the gear on. And then I'd drop them off Algeria. If they wanted to keep the guns, we could do that. If they didn't want to keep the guns, we could drop them off anywhere, and they'd just chuck them in the sea. I mean, a gun's worth nothing. Like a machine gun will cost $200. They're very cheap. I mean, unfortunately. Yeah. But so you'd better just to throw them over the side. We all have a go. I'm not a gun person, but we always have lots of balloons, and we blow the balloons up and chuck them and all shoot it away. And it's quite a curious
sport.
Good sport.
Something to do.
Yeah.
And now, one thing you didn't mention at the start, but I know you've done, is to captain Sea Shepherd.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about Sea Shepherd.
It's pretty controversial. There are a lot of professional seafarers, captains, chief engineers.
Perhaps, so I'm just going to break in on you. Just tell the listeners what Sea Shepherd is.
Sea Shepherd's an interesting thing. It was originally Greenpeace was the starting point. And there was a feeling amongst certain people that they weren't doing too much. They weren't very active. They were more or less flying a rainbow flag and putting a few stickers on things. And there was a core of people who said, no, we've got to be a bit more active than this. You actually got to do something. Now, the gentleman that started the move, he started off with Greenpeace and he fractured off to the side and started Sea Shepherd. Sea Shepherd are more militant and more active when it comes to conservation of marine life, particularly whales and dolphins and porpoises like they slaughter in Japan. And so I was attracted to it because of one very important thing. I feel very strongly about the unnecessary slaughter of the whales in the Southern Ocean, which is part of our protectorate. We were responsible for it, Australia. It's actually a sanctuary, and the Japanese go in there and slaughter these things under the pretense of research, and yet all the product is sold on the fish market in Japan. You know?
Yes.
A minke whale, which is a small whale, can generate revenue of about $800,000 one minke.
800,000.
So the research is quite valuable, and after you've finished, put it under the microscope, you can freeze the product down. So, and I just object to that, and I would love to see Sea Shepherd close and never have to do anything again, because I think it's a responsibility of the government and the Navy. They're meant to look after our waterways, but for some reason they don't. And the only people who go down there are volunteers who are hairdressers and shoe salesmen and truck drivers who give their time and do this to help out, no cost, pay their own way. I have the utmost respect for them, and they do a pretty good job. But a lot of people, there's a bit of criticism. They can be pretty radical and they do things, but I only do what I wish to do. I feel pretty strongly. I went to the Faroe Islands up near the Arctic because they slaughter the pilot whales there. They'll slaughter thousands of them just for fun. Yet they can't eat them because they're so full of heavy metals. The government has banned them from being... And my argument was, well, sure, I understand a rite of passage. You know, it's a thing they've done traditionally. But why kill thousands of them and leave them lying on the beach? To me, it doesn't make sense.
No.
You know? So, and I do believe that they're a reasonably intelligent kind of animal. They're proven to have some sort of what's the word I'm seeking? They
They're aware.
They're aware.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessary to slaughter them like that. You know? The whales in the Southern Ocean. We have the Animal Planet Discovery Channel film crews on board, and the guy showed me some footage which still shakes me even to this day, and that was a Japanese whaling factory ship starting to suck the whales up the stern ramp to chop them up. All the dead whales floating around, they put a lance in and blow them up with air to keep them buoyant. And the Sea Shepherd ship, Steve Irwin, was there, and on the lee side, on the off side of the ship, he walked over the camera and looked down into the sea, and all the mother whales with the baby whales were hiding in the shadow of the Sea Shepherd ship because they knew all this blood in the water and the slaughter going on. And you look at all these mothers and their babies swimming around, hiding behind the ship, and you think there's a good measure of intelligence and feeling there.
That's
when they
astounding,
do that.
isn't it? Yeah.
And things like that, when you see them firsthand, I haven't witnessed it myself, but many of the people on the ship say once you look into the eye of a whale, you change.
Right.
And I've heard the story so many times.
Yes.
I've never witnessed them myself. But they say there is some recognition. It's like looking into the eye of an intelligent dog. There's an awareness.
Yes.
Anyway,
That's
so I do that. They're very short of professional seafarers. A lot of Australian ships captains and things drive the Sea Shepherd ships. And you get on there, the chief engineers and the captains are usually professional. Helicopter pilot, helicopter engineer, usually military people on leave. And they're like a sponge. They soak up the knowledge. So you go onto the bridge and there's somebody laying around, you know, combing their dreadlocks and things. And so you kick them around a bit, shake the whole thing up, but they actually love it. They like to professionalise themselves.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Did you have any incidents, let's say, while you were...
lots of incidents, probably very unwise to talk about some.
An example?
They ask you to do... They do ask you to take the ship into remote places or places where they're known to be hostile. Up in the Faroes, which is all fjords, a bit like fjords in New Zealand, deep water fjords, lots of little ports up in the Arctic that time of the year. The sun's still in the sky at 10 o'clock at night. 10 o'clock at night, it's like daylight. And I took the ship into these very, very small places. The ship barely fitted without any charts. Just very risky to do that on a sizable ship. Steve Irwin's a reasonable size little ship, and put alongside the wharf. And then the hostile natives would come and get a bit wound up, and we'd fly the flag, put a bit of presence there. Not necessarily go there to start a brawl or something, but just to wave the flag, show them what's going on. So it's done with purpose. It's done to be confrontational.
Yeah.
Sometimes confrontation is the best way to get your message across.
Mm-hmm. Bit of confrontation you get on the telly.
Sure thing. Yeah. The one that I actually have a fondness for Japan and Japanese people. I love the place, I love the people, but I don't enjoy the whaling aspect of it, and I don't enjoy the slaughter of the dolphins in Darji. That's just a ghastly thing. So I don't mind being confrontationalist when it comes to those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing there may be people who listen to this who have some different views about it. I do find the people that have the most comment and the most critical about Sea Shepherd know very little about it.
Yes.
And I do encourage people to have a look on the internet. If you're in Melbourne, go to Williamstown, that's their headquarters, and go and have a look around, go on board the ships.
Can you do that? The public can go and
of course.
board the ships?
Yeah, they're open now. And you'll find, people say they're full of hippies and bums, and ships are, all run down. They're old ships. They're immaculate. The standard's very high. They run them very professionally. They're maintained well.
If people want to get involved with Sea Shepherd, how would they do that?
Yeah, anyone can volunteer. They have a website. And anyone at all is welcome to volunteer and do a trip on the ship. Now, sometimes it might just mean there's some good trips they do from, say, Sydney to Melbourne to put the ship on display in Sydney. So anyone with no seafaring experience can go, and you might end up swinging on a mop or pulling on a rope.
This podcast is mostly for senior people.
There's lots of senior people.
Okay,
yeah.
So you can do that.
As long as you can get around.
Yes.
Reasonably, they make you very welcome. Everybody is welcome, and there are some people who are extremely passionate about it and can be in your face, and there are other people that are just like you and me, just have some sort of commitment to do something. Yeah. And you meet the most amazing. I've met people from all walks of life, including very, very professional people, all sorts of manner of highly trained, highly qualified people. Even down the last time, there was two sinister-looking guys sitting in the corner with full face tattoos, and they were the genuine Hell's Angels from Oakland, California, the real McCoy.
Yes. I
was so intrigued, and they were very, very passionate about it. I said, "Oh no, man, this is not fair, and we'll come and do it." So you meet some lovely, lovely people. Yeah.
That sounds like a good place to wind up, because we've been going for a little while. You're probably going to be surprised at how long we've been talking. Thank you very much for giving some of your experiences.
Pleasure.
If people want to, if you think that Sea Shepherd might be something you want to get involved with, folks, look it up on the net. I'll put the web address in the show notes. So there we go. Rob, you're living in a gorgeous place, a lovely sunny day today, folks, but you can imagine what it's like on board. It's not always like this, I imagine. No. So thank you very much.
That's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I might add one reason I live here is because it's a long way from the sea. All right. Thanks, Henry. I appreciate the time.
Well, as you heard, Rob is happy and he's comfortable telling stories about his days on the water. He was very laconic about pirates. He just said, they boarded the ship. Didn't go much further into that. And I missed the opportunity to talk further about that, because that sounds like a really scary thing to me. But he does get serious at one time. He gets serious towards the end when we're talking about the protection of sea mammals, of porpoises and whales. He gets, you could feel the emotion coming through there. That's something I think which really is dear to his heart. He talks about Greenpeace, and in particular Sea Shepherd, having been the captain of the Sea Shepherd ship called the Steve Irwin, and also their other trimaran. There's a photo of it on the website. I think it's called a trimaran. The name of which is Sea Shepherd, I believe. I didn't know that anybody could tour their ships. It's now, where are we? We're in May in 2016. Apparently, the ships are berthed at Williamstown in Victoria, and you can go and have a look at them. You can go and tour the ships and see where they live, what they do, and talk to the folks who are there. If you're interested in Sea Shepherd, you can have a look at their website. It's Sea Shepherd, SEASHEPHERD, so Sea Shepherd, all one word, .org, O-R-G. And they also have a Facebook page with over 200,000 likes. So obviously the people of Victoria and Australia are very, very supportive. Now, if you go to the web page, you'll see that there's news there, there's ways to donate, there's a link to their bookshop, all sorts of ways that you can support the defence of sea mammals. If you've had any experience with any of the activities of either Greenpeace or Sea Shepherd, or in fact if you don't agree with what they're doing, leave us a little message in the reply box at the bottom of the web page. Just go to Retired Excited, so retiredexcited.com, and find your way to episode 16. Or you can contact me directly, henry@retiredexcited.com. And you could start a conversation, or you could be involved in a conversation about how Australia reacts, I guess that's the right way to say it, how Australia reacts to Japanese whaling and Japanese killing of dolphins. I think this has been a really, really good interview. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. You could tell from the interview that I was enjoying myself. There was no alcohol involved. Leave us a comment. Keep well, keep happy. That's it for today, and I will see you next week. Bye then.
I like that. I'm going to give that a go for sure.
Ian loved it.
That was terrific.
And I
That was
liked it.
interesting. What a good idea.